Malcolm, welcome back to Mea Culpa. So much going on here. Understand that you're abroad. I understand that right now you're in Greenland. Am I right about that?
Wrong. I'm actually in Helsinki,
Oh, you're in Helsinki.
Finland. Yeah, I've left Greenland and then I flew to Copenhagen and I interviewed some officials in Copenhagen. And now I'm coming back from there and I'm on my way back to New York City from Helsinki.
Nice. Well, if you can you share the purpose of your trip? And more importantly, if you would, focus on how Greenlanders are responding to President Trump's renewed interest in purchasing their country. I mean, a proposal that he made in his first term, echoing it again in his recent speeches. How have these comments impacted U.S.-Greenland relations, particularly as Greenland looks to assert more autonomy from Denmark, and climate change is making the Arctic territory more strategically valuable?
Well, I don't know about strategically valuable, but by the time the Arctic Circle and the passages through the Davis Straits and the areas like up in Baffin Island in the Northwest Passage becomes valuable, Manhattan will be under 3 feet of water. So whoever's making these calculations, they're not making those calculations with a rational way of thinking. It's impassable in many areas. The Arctic Sea in itself is an enormous area of ice, and the Greenlanders, to talk about the entire way people are believing. Of what's happening between the United States and Greenland, they can't believe this. The country is physically massive. It is 2,200 kilometers, approximately 1,000 miles long. It's about 1,000, not 1,000, but like I think about 600 miles wide, maybe a little more at the widest areas. But the people live in the very small sliver of the southwestern part of the country where the Gulf Stream and other areas warm that area, and there is slight areas of green down there. That, yeah, I mean, it's really far. It takes like 4 hours to fly from the top of the green area to the bottom of the green
Oh,
area.
wow.
Um, and there's only 57,000 people living in those small villages. There's the capital of Nuuk is not a city by any measure we would use. It would be considered a large town. It has 18,000 people, the most people in the country. But every other little settlement is from a few hundred to the biggest, 5,000 in Sisimiut or places like that. They can't understand what's happening and their relations with the United States. They like Americans, but right now, almost to a man, they hate Donald Trump and his administration and his aspirations to take over their country.
Yeah. Look, they're not the only ones right now. Obviously,
Oh,
you and I spoke yesterday, before,
right.
before obviously this podcast. President Trump had the South African president in the Oval Office, Cyril Ramaphosa. And he did something which was just mind blowing as I sat there and watched it. He presented a debunked, racially charged video alleging systematic killings of white farmers, a claim that has long promoted by these far right groups and
Right.
discredited by both the South African government as well as international human rights monitors. The first thing these human rights monitors would love to do is to point a finger and say, hey, this is going on. That's what they're actually designed to do. But they
Right.
didn't. Let me ask you this. What implications does this have for U.S. diplomacy? But more importantly, our credibility on the world stage when the president of the United States pushes white nationalist talking points in official state meetings that he held publicly on purpose?
Well, Donald Trump better than anybody, and as you've said just recently, his erratic behaviors are not consistent with what you know. I mean, this is a new person who has now been enthralled with the concept of the United States being a white supremacist nation, right? They have dominant white dominance over all of their people and cultures. This is why the United States is closing 17 embassies and consulates in Africa. Just hates Africa. He does not see black people or people from the African continent as having anything that they can contribute to society. That surrenders a continent with hundreds of millions of people to China as a global trading partner, surrenders minerals that for a big country like South Africa has enormous mineral wealth. That's where Elon Musk grew his rich. His father was an emerald miner in Namibia, and gave Elon Musk raw diamonds and emeralds to bring to the United States, which he sold as an illegal immigrant and became rich and managed to buy into PayPal. So all of these things together, Trump appears to do things to humiliate people based on the fantasies and lies he's being told. He is like a presidential troll. Like his official job is to troll enemies of MAGA, and that he's going to be the troller in chief. He did it to Zelensky. That, without a doubt, is one of the most shameless situations that has ever occurred in U.S. history. So you used the word diplomacy a little earlier. There is no U.S. diplomacy right now. The State Department is nothing, is essentially a megaphone for Donald Trump's trolling. Look at Marco Rubio, the hearings that he had this week, where people
Mhm.
like Chris Van Hollen, Senator Chris Van Hollen, who went to El Salvador to try to get out one of his constituents. Marco Rubio acted like he was just another MAGA street thug, right? Telling them, getting in their face, telling people that, screw you, you're wrong. You wouldn't vote for me. That's a badge of honor. There's no diplomacy here. Thomas Jefferson, right, the first Secretary of
Yep.
State, would pull his hair out. There is no gentlemanly talk. There's no gentility. There is no diplomacy. And all of his ambassadors and now senior State Department personnel, they're chosen to determine, based on whether they will be the asshole that Donald Trump needs to, obviously, in many instances, deliver the extortion letters that they call diplomacy, force countries like they're doing in West Africa, saying they will cut off all of their economic aid, all of their financial aids and grants, power, energy, if they didn't take a contract with Starlink. I mean, this is just a racketeering
It's
operation.
extortion.
So,
I mean, it's nothing but
yeah,
an extortion operation. Though I do have
he's
to push
great at
back.
that.
I
Hmm.
do have to push back a tiny bit. I actually
Mhm.
thought yesterday's Oval Office meeting with Ramaphosa, that I thought was absolutely even worse than what they did
Oh,
to Zelensky. I just want to set the stage to those people who maybe didn't see it, where all of a sudden he's talking about the execution and the murder of these white farmers in South Africa, and he was like, dim the lights. It was almost like it was a production
it
going
was,
on,
yeah.
right? And you
He
could see
stages
the
these.
look on President Ramaphosa's face, like, what the hell? And then all of a sudden they're showing, he's like, you see that? You see that? And he's like, Mr. President, that's just not real. That's been debunked. I mean, that to me leads me to my next question, because what this really was not an Oval Office meeting. It was the spread of false narratives, right?
Of
This
course.
so-called white genocide in South Africa. But I'll tell you the danger, knowing Trump as I do, and the fear that I have when I see this stuff, because I see things differently than virtually anybody else because of my unique situation and spending as much time with him as I did. I'll tell you what it shows me. It shows that there is a clear pipeline from extremist media right into the Oval Office of the White House.
Of course. Yes,
And the
of
question I
course.
want to ask you is, how do these conspiracy theories infiltrate these high level discussions? And what does it really say about the role of Trump's bullshit inner circle? Advisors like Stephen Miller, Marco Rubio, Caroline Levitt, and so many others falling into line, failing to verify basic information that you could get right off of Google, especially before it reaches global audiences, because that appearance yesterday was not just shown in America, that's shown all around the world.
Right. And well, what you are seeing here is a cabinet, all right, and staffers, aides, and as I call them, right, cult enablers who understand that the boss does not care about reality. The boss cares about his ideology. And his ideology, look, we use the phrase white nationalism, not white nationalism, right? It's white supremacy. And that means that not only should America be a all white led and dominated nation, that it should evangelize for that around the world, right? So essentially taking the United States back to the British imperial mindset, okay, of the 16th and 17th and 18th century. Now, to you and me, that sounds crazy, right? Because guess what? It's crazy. In a multipolar, multilingual, multicultural, multinational, multi-ethnicity nation built on its literal pride of foundation of its differences, of its diversity. Remember that word? That's a dirty
Yeah.
word in this White House. I mean, they literally don't care what aspect of American culture they damage. Like when they're going through the Pentagon with a scythe right now and firing every woman, every black, just getting rid of them as general officers, which will devastate the United States Armed Forces, right?
Yeah.
An organization built for centuries on teamwork and meritocracy. Well, it can't be meritocracy if the president of the United States is going to the president of South Africa and saying, look what's happening in your country. Well, I've been to South Africa. I've been to Johannesburg. That's a damn dangerous town. And it's not dangerous because people are white farmers. It's dangerous because it is an enormous number of very poor people who, in the apartheid system, which was this official government segregation of people into their racial categories, white at the top, colored in between, which is mixed race or East Indian, and then blacks at the bottom who got nothing, lived literally on scraps. And then when that system came down because it was not sustainable, they didn't provide any job trade,
Right.
anything for the men. The system never changed. So, you know, um, they have crime that is off the charts. Murder there is astronomical. None of it is, ooh, I'm gonna go to that farm and kill that farmer because he's white, because I want to farm. Okay.
Yeah.
So they use the word genocide. Okay. Look, talking to a guy, grew up in an Orthodox Jewish neighborhood. First language was Yiddish. First decrypted language was Hebrew. Spoke at Auschwitz twice, including at a conference on genocide. Okay. This ain't genocide. A few white South African farmers being beaten up or some killed through, they're generally not killed through um, crime focused on them. This wasn't during the Civil War, the South African insurgency of the African National Congress. These are people who are roaming bands of guys who do what we call a 6 to 6, right? They start drinking at 6 in the evening and they stop
Mm.
drinking at 6 in the morning. And about 2 a.m., they need alcohol money. So they carjack, they rob houses, they do break-in house robbery. And yeah, the victims population in South Africa is not white. The victim population is black. But there are those instances and circumstances where they see a nice white car, it has a white guy in it, they're going to go carjack. They're going to get their money, right? They're going to get a lick. So Trump has viewed this. fake information and is putting it out as president of the United States. And what it doesn't do is it doesn't explain things for the South African. It doesn't explain things properly to the world. It lowers the opinion of the world about you, me,
Yep.
as Americans, right? I'm hiding right now. Uh, and
Yeah.
and makes us look like morons on the world stage. Here's the number one question I was asked on this trip. I swear to God, it must have been asked 10 times in the last couple of weeks. What's wrong with America? What's wrong with your country? And
Yeah.
I'm
You
like,
know, I got
Donald
that
Trump
same
is what's wrong
question.
with my country.
I got that same question from my own family who live in
Oy.
Canada and asking me the same thing. But, you know, as the guy who used to be around Trump the most, as a guy who legitimately protected him, and not
Mm.
just from everybody else, but from
From myself?
himself as well.
Mm. Yeah. Yeah.
What
That's
bothers me is the fact that the president of the United States, a man who I once truly, truly cared for, was literally handed, and publicly showed a discredited video in the presence of a foreign head of state. And I'm going to tell you what that suggests to me. One of two things: either gross negligence or intentional political provocation. And I'm going to say something to you. I believe it's the latter.
yeah,
What
I agree.
what responsibilities do national security and foreign policy advisors have to this man that I protected, to this man who is the president of the United States? And my question to you also is, who do you think should ultimately be accountable when the president of the United States, hence all of us, are left looking not just unprepared and reckless, but abso-fucking-lutely stupid on the world stage?
Well, first off, I'm afraid to say that we are talking on norms that ceased to exist when he became president this time. The last time he had a traditional Washington, career diplomats and generals and all these people who would never go to, owning the libs as U.S. foreign policy. Well, right now, it's owning the world as U.S. foreign policy. His behavior towards China, Mike, how the hell is China the adult in the room now, right?
Hard to
That a
believe.
centralized communist party slash capitalist system, okay, is behaving far more decently to their own people in some respects, right? Of course, they're totalitarian commies, right? They will disappear you. They'll shoot you in the head, and they'll still charge you that 5 cents for the bullet. That's official policy in China.
DeleteMe makes it easy, quick, and safe to remove your personal data online at a time when surveillance and data breaches are common enough to make everyone vulnerable. Now, let me be straight with you. As someone with a very public profile who spent years dealing with everything from harassment to bad faith actors digging into my life, I take my privacy very seriously because I've seen what can happen when personal data gets into the wrong hands. And let's be honest, it's never been easier to find out, for example, where someone lives, what their phone number is, or even who their family members are. I mean, that's not just creepy, it's dangerous. We're living in a time where partisans and trolls are targeting people simply for speaking their minds online. And if your info is just sitting out there, that makes you a sitting duck. And that's why I use DeleteMe. They work behind the scenes to remove your personal data from hundreds of data broker sites. It's the smartest move I've made to protect my digital footprint. And it gives me peace of mind knowing I'm not just leaving that info out in the open. So take control of your data and keep your private life private by signing up with DeleteMe, now at a special discount for just our listeners. Today, get 20% off your DeleteMe plan by texting Cohen, Cohen, to 64000. The only way to get 20% off is to text Cohen to 64000. Again, that's Cohen to 64000. Message and data rates may apply. Go now. You ever stand in a grocery store staring at a piece of fish, wondering if it's going to taste like the ocean or like regret? Well, I've been there. And after everything I've seen, after everything I've done, trust is a luxury, especially when it comes to what I put on my plate. And that's why I'm telling you straight, Wild Alaskan Company is the only seafood that I trust, period. End of story. I mean, when that first box showed up at my door, I was skeptical. I mean, wild caught, perfectly portioned, frozen right off the damn boat. I mean, it sounded too good to be true. But I opened it. I cooked up some coho salmon, pan-seared with a little olive oil and some sea salt, and I swear to you, I haven't looked back. The flavor? It's clean, rich, real. It's the kind of fish that makes you realize just how bad that you had it before. And here's the kicker. It's 100% wild caught. There's no antibiotics, no GMOs, no factory farming, just fish from pristine Alaskan waters that's caught with care, shipped with purpose, and meant to be savored. Every single bite supports sustainable fishing communities. I mean, for God's sakes, it's seafood with a soul. So listen, not all fish are the same. And if you want seafood that you can trust, go right now to wildalaskan.com/Cohen and get $35 off your first box of wild caught greatness. That's Wild Alaskan, WILDALASKAN.com/Cohen. There's no risk, no BS, just the best damn fish that you'll ever eat. And let me say this, thanks again to Wild Alaskan Company for sponsoring this episode. Now go eat like you mean it.
But their people have come to understand that their way of life, their quality of life has increased dramatically with the controls that they've placed in China. They have one of the world's largest bullet train network, and Donald Trump is trying to kill Amtrak to get rid of high-speed rail in America. Weird, right? They now have the biggest car producers in the world. The BYD, they're advertising in Denmark, Chinese electric cars. And there's Teslas everywhere. And people all have that Elon sucks sticker on them. Not joking. So all of this is Trump's worldview is we will be a white supremacist nation. We will withdraw into ourselves. It's like the world erased everything since 1939. And Roosevelt lost the election, and Charles Lindbergh won, and
There was
America
a Netflix, I
first.
think there was like a Netflix show about that, right? Like what would have
Yeah, yeah,
happened if Adolf Hitler
yeah.
won
The man in
and
the
Charles
high
Lindbergh was
tower.
president? Yeah.
Right. Lindbergh was made the head of the American Nazi Party, and America first won. It was no mistake of him doing his last rally at Madison Square Garden, his last major rally, which is where the Nazi American Bund held their rally just before World War II, right? The Lindbergh rally with George Washington next to Adolf Hitler. This is not just trolling. It is an ideology that is so out of control. It's against America. It's against everyone who isn't a white American. It's against anyone who isn't a Trump voter. It's against the world. And it's against anyone that does not come and pay homage to him. And unfortunately, the world is more adult than that. They are going to take their business elsewhere.
Malcolm,
I heard that,
it's
by the way, I
not
heard the
just,
treasuries are down.
yeah, they are by a lot.
Oy.
Let
Mhm.
me say this to you. It's not just about the color of the skin. We've heard
Mhm.
MAGA Mike Johnson parrot Trump on this. What they want
Right.
to do is they want to turn America back into a white, male, Christian,
Christian.
nationalist country. Well,
And
that
that's white
creates a
nationalists.
multitude. That's right. That creates a multitude of problems. First of all, more than 50% of America are women. Two, not everybody in this country is Christian. All right. What happens to the Hindus? What happens to the Jews? What happens to the Muslims? What happens to the Scientologists? What happens to anyone who is not Christian? Are we going to go and we're going to have back the pogroms? I mean, what's going to go on here? And what ends up happening again to women and to women's rights? We've already seen the gutting or the beginning of the gutting of women's rights, just starting with their
Right.
reproductive decision making. This is truly a dangerous ideology, because at the end of the day, again, it is only a very small group, even in America, that are white,
Hmm.
male, Christian, and nationalists.
And my question is, who's going to do the work? I mean, and don't come to me and tell me that, I live in upstate New York. I'm from Philadelphia, where we had in Philadelphia, I could get contractors from a multitude, were greatly diverse contractors. I'd call a roofer, a black guy would show up with a Latino guy, some white guys on the crew. It was about whoever paid the most, who was doing the work, what the
Right.
contract was like. Where I live in upstate New York, who for the last 15 years, all I heard was these guys, exclusively white males, complain about Mexican labor. There was no Mexican labor up there. None. Zero. But for a decade and a half, that's all they complained about. And I kept saying, where are those Mexicans at? Right?
Yeah.
Those guys
Right.
work. I'll call them. Who exactly is going to be in this future white nationalist America going to be doing the job where you refuse to recognize diversity and that people have the same rights that you have, and women? Who's getting up on the roof? Right? I got, that now they're gutting OSHA so you don't have to wear a harness. Okay. If you fall off, they're gutting your insurance. You don't need to pay for anything. This being said, it changes the fabric of America, from which, having over 250 years woven a strong pattern of America is the best of the immigrants who come here,
Mhm.
assimilate, and work together. They're about to devastate Springfield, or they're devastating Springfield, Ohio. They're kicking out the 50,000 Haitian workers and those factories up there that saved the city. Three Catholic churches were going to be closed. Haitians are all Catholic. They're booming and thriving. They're going to be closed again. Everyone's physically being forced out of the United
Malcolm,
States.
I got
Mm,
to tell you something. You're spot on when you turn around and you make the statement that you have to be, of course, loyal, and it's not even loyal. You have to be stupidly loyal,
Psychopath.
total
Right.
fealty to Trump. There's going to be a point in time where you can't even ask him a question if he doesn't like the question and he doesn't want to give the answer. And that was
Right.
exemplified. That was exemplified the other day when Trump had a complete and total meltdown outburst against NBC's Peter Alexander, who I happen to know, and I'm going to tell you, he is a respected journalist. And why did Trump have this outburst? Because he asked him about the Qatari 747, which Trump accepted,
Yeah,
and
which
not
is now, mhm.
and not
It's
about the South Africa video that he just played, which was laced with, I mean, the outburst was just laced with hostility and deflection. The question I want to ask you is, how does this ongoing war with the press affect the public's ability to get truthful answers, especially truthful answers in matters that involve foreign gifts, potential
mhm.
corruption, etc.?
Well, I just want to call attention that the Conservative Political Action Committee, over the last few years, now hosts a CPAC conference in Hungary every year. And that is where they went. I'm going to take off, by the way, my national security hat here. And I'm going to put on my National Association of Black Journalism journalist hat, and say that Viktor Orban of Hungary, was the first real leader in modern Europe to take the Putin playbook and go after the media with a hammer and tongs.
Yep.
He couldn't buy it like Putin. Putin didn't buy it. Putin just nationalized it, just seized it, took everyone's news media organizations and got rid of all news media channels and programs that were critical of him and put on variety shows, balalaika dancers, and action movies, including especially Steven Seagal movies, right? Um, Trump is trying the Viktor Orban control, and like that troll tactic of his, he's not even speaking to the journalists. He's not speaking to the people in the room. He is weaponeering the power of the bully pulpit of the president of the United States into a humiliation device, because people who are MAGA, people who, which is cult worship, right? Um, they ask good questions like, how are you so lean and thin? Right? If you saw Carolyn Levitt's thing, what is his routine? He looks so good. He's so healthy. Anyone who steps outside of that, Trump is bound solely by the slightest sliver of norms of having journalists in there. I suspect that within 6 months there will never be a regular line traditional news media journalist allowed in the White House at all. Not for press briefings, not for anything. He's going to go full MAGA, Elon Musk. It'll be X, right? It'll be Twitter
Hmm.
today. But by doing this ritualistic humiliation of the journalist, it shows two things. One, and Mike, you're the one of the guys that I trust most on speaking about this. I really think that there is a measure of very severe cognitive decline with Donald Trump.
I don't see
For
it.
all they say,
I
yeah,
you know,
well,
so to my listeners,
mm,
just so you understand, on Thursdays, every Thursday, Malcolm, myself, Lev Parnas, we have a show, right,
yeah,
called Unhinged. And what we do is we talk about the issues that are presenting. We'll probably start doing it more than just once a week, but we've had this conversation before where you
yeah,
truly believe that there's a cognitive decline in Trump. And sure, he's 79 years old. There's a cognitive decline by any individual. Albert Einstein at the age of 79 was cognitively, less than what he was at the age of 25 or 30 or 40. That just happens by age, but he is not suffering from dementia. He knows
hmm,
exactly what he is doing. There is no sort of dementia here running the show. What is demented is his ideology, and what's even more demented are these motherfuckers that are around him, these enablers that really, unlike what I used to be, they don't care about him. It is all about them. You see, Elon Musk goes on TV the other day and he says, I'm not going to really put any more money into the political sphere unless I really choose to, right? So he keeps himself open for that. And why? Well, because I've done enough, right? The, all of this is basically just this gaslighting, and that's all they want to do. It's like pravda in Russia, which means truth in Russian, where there is no truth. They
right.
want to rewrite history. They want to sane wash everything. Trump doesn't want to do the homework. All of this is being done by Project 2025. All you need to do is read that 922-page manifesto, and they are basically spoon feeding the toddler in chief with information from Project 2025. He just stands up there, signs a piece of paper, wants to get all the accolades. But the problem is that no accolades should be given, because everything about Project 2025 is designed in order to dismantle our American democracy.
Right. Well, I got to tell you, I respect your opinion on that, but that does. I'm not talking about like he's a demented old man and going in decline in that respect. I mean, the irrationalism, the explosion, the facilitation of his enablers, whatever the last words that are there. He has no measure to him when he gets in these situations. He's more, to me, it appears that he's on a much higher ramped up, amped up scale of exploding about things that are ideologically important to him, and to where he, his job was to humiliate Cyril Ramaphosa in
Yeah.
the Oval Office. And then suddenly it's like, hey, let's talk about that airplane. To him, that was last week's bullshit. And that it's taken, the Air Force has taken possession of that aircraft, which, by the way, was in a facility in Texas. We just saved the Qataris something like $500 million
Yeah. I
accepting
mean,
that airplane.
the whole thing is just so
But
stupid.
but it's the whole point of him. You ruined my moment by injecting other subjects and realities that I did not want in here. Look, they're going to replace him with Tim Pool, right? A guy who got $100,000 a video from Russia, right? Somebody who is more psychophantic, or they're going to get rid of him and replace him with Laura Loomer. So who is just a nut. Uh, but all of this is part and parcel to the fact that, as you said, his enablers. I know what's going on here. This is the Cash Money Brothers.
That's,
Everyone sees Trump as
I
a
keep
way to
calling
get
it that.
money.
I keep
Yeah,
calling it
you
that.
said that. You
Right.
said that.
It's like right out of New Jack City, right? Am I my
Right,
brother's keeper? They are all sitting there back channel having these dinners at their 25, $30 million houses in DC, talking about how we could make the next 4 years into the greatest cash cow for us,
right,
so that after that, fuck America. We'll get onto our 500-foot yacht, right? And we'll go sail the world with a crew of 80, right? And a second boat behind it that'll be our military to make sure nobody blocks us, nobody stops us, nobody does.
right,
They
right.
have these aspirations of, like, I don't know, medieval
Fiefdoms.
warlords, right?
Right,
Fiefdom.
Lord. Yeah,
You know,
I'm getting their motto appears to be, I'm getting paid, bitches.
right. Right. You ever try launching a podcast with zero experience? Well, let me tell you, it's like being tossed into a cage match with a grizzly bear, blindfolded, wearing clown shoes. I mean, when I started Mea Culpa, I thought to myself, come on, how hard can this be? Well, script writing, logos, production schedules, ad deals, and don't even get me started on the tech setup. I mean, I felt like I was decoding the damn Matrix. If only I had Shopify when I launched this beast. Shopify is the platform behind millions of businesses across the globe, responsible for a whopping 10%. You hear me? 10% of all e-commerce in the United States. And my friends, that's not hype. That's a fact. From big names like Mattel and Gymshark to folks just getting their hustle off the ground, Shopify's got their back. I mean, you want a gorgeous online store? Shopify's got hundreds of sleek, ready to go templates that make you look like a design god. And AI tools? Yeah, they've got those too. Writing your product descriptions, jazzing up your images, maybe even making you sound smarter than you actually are. I mean, not naming names or anything, right? I mean, need a marketing squad? Shopify's built-in tools let you hit email, Instagram, TikTok, wherever your customers are scrolling or doom scrolling. And listen, Shopify handles it all. Inventory, returns, international shipping. I mean, they are the ride or die business partner that you never knew that you needed. So if you got a big idea or even a little one and you're ready to turn that dream into a reality, head over to shopify.com/Cohen. So if you want to see less carts being abandoned, it's time for you to head over to Shopify and sign up for your $1 per month trial and start selling today at shopify.com/Cohen. That's Shopify, SHOPIFY.com/Cohen. One more time, that's shopify.com/Cohen.
That's what Trump is. He's the facilitator of a network. What's funny is that I read Ayn Rand's, Atlas Shrugged when I was in the military, right? Because I had a lot of time. Book about that thick. It was about this system. These people who invaded Washington and were all washing each other's backs and then selling the government essentially to get enormous amounts of money. While in the book, the intellectuals all move off to Colorado. This
Yeah.
isn't going to happen. We are the people getting screwed,
Well, but
and
Malcolm,
these people
we
are
have
getting paid.
Yeah, but we got a bigger problem than just the enablers. We have a bigger problem than just the enablers that are there inside the White House, the ones that were handpicked by Donald based upon their loyalty pledges and so on. They recently passed that one big, beautiful bill, right, which I describe as a Frankenstein of policy, which covers defense spending, immigration enforcement, education cuts, tax restructuring. It represents this big, beautiful, or I should say, this fucking ugly bill represents one of the largest policy overhauls in history. All right.
Yeah.
Forgetting
Yeah.
about the long term effects that this is going to have on the US economy. They're talking about increasing the deficit by about $30 trillion over 10 years, right? Destroying our social safety nets, destroying our constitutional balance of power. Here's my question to you. This bill passed with overwhelming Republican support. There
Yeah.
were
Had two nay
only, what,
votes.
two
Two nay
Republicans
votes,
who broke with
one
Trump
abstention.
and one abstention.
Yeah.
Exactly. What does it say about today's GOP that there weren't even four Republicans who were willing to oppose this 2,100-page bill that was rammed through without full committee hearings or any public input?
You remember the old days when when there were earmarks and you voted
Sure.
for these bills because your district would get a new power station, new infrastructure, new military base, or an enhancement to a current facility. That's not what's happening anymore. This bill was about the destruction of government and the increase, and this is why treasuries are going to crash today, right? U.S. long-term debt is now completely unsustainable and out of control. And they
Yep.
believe in the bullshit that they're talking. The philosophy here is we getting paid, and when you run a scam, there has to be a victim. And this reminds me of, I have a projects near me, right? A low income housing area, and I have a guy who contracts for me, and he's always getting scammed. And I kept telling him, I go, dude, your neighbors are the victim population of those scammers in those areas. In this case, the American public is the victim population. They took this money from children's food programs. They took it from Medicaid and Medicare. And somehow these guys rationalized it in their head that this was great for America. It's not. They getting paid. They're gonna earn, every Republican is gonna earn personal money out of this. There is not one person with integrity. You're saying this as a former conservative, right? I've first guy
Yeah.
I ever voted for is Ronald Reagan. None of that. Ronald Reagan is in the far leftist liberal side now. We're going to get screwed, and America is going to be badly damaged.
I mean,
So
I don't understand what the hell these people are thinking. You
I
have
don't know.
foreign government like Qatar, which has complex ties to Hamas. Listen, you know this better than anybody. How many years are you doing this? Right.
Almost 40. Yeah.
Almost 40 years. Qatar
Mm.
has complex ties to Hamas. They have complex
Yes, they
ties
do.
to the Taliban, and they also have complex ties to U.S. military operations. They gift they gift a $400 million aircraft. That, by the way, is going to cost the United States about $1 billion to take it apart, to x-ray everything, to make sure that there's no booby traps or anything like that. They're not gifting it, as Trump would like to say, to the United States, to the Department of Defense, to the Air Force. They are gifting this to the President of the United States. And like a petulant child, he sees that aircraft. He, in his mind, compares it to his 757. This is a 747-8, which is the biggest of
Right.
all the Boeings.
Stretch. Right.
Stretched. He compares it to his
It's a stretched
757.
limousine of airplanes.
Right? He compares it
Mhm.
to his 757 and saying to himself, I want that. Mine, mine, mine.
Mhm.
Go, go, go. Right? It's mine. It's mine. It's
But
mine.
don't forget, and this will have to be my last comment. Don't forget, He gets $1 billion golf course there too. And then the Emiratis are putting billions of dollars into his meme coin and Bitcoin and things like that. And the Saudis are going to be, the Saudis didn't say what they were doing other than the largest defense purchase in the United States. I worked in the Muslim world my entire life, right? I had a situation where I had to buy armored, soft vehicles in Baghdad. And the first thing those guys were like was like, oh, here's your 10%. I was like, sorry, can't be bought. Donald Trump would be like, 10, ah, 20, bitches. You need to give me my money
Right.
and I'm going to give you stuff too. But let's just get that number straight, 20%, 30%, whatever it's going to be. We're going to find out. And Eric and Don Jr. are raking in that money. So,
Oh, big time. So
well,
look, Malcolm, I know that you have to go. I have just
I
one
got to jump
final
on an
question.
airplane.
Yeah, I just have one final question for you on this one.
Sure.
What do you think that future administrations do or have to do differently
Ah,
to
I'm
restore
telling you.
America's integrity, our intelligence, and our honor?
I got to
What
tell
are
you,
we going to have to
next
do?
con. Oh, I've been giving this a lot of thought. I call it Project 2027. The great American backlash is going to happen in 2027. And here's what we have to do. John Leguizamo put out a great video recently where he was like, when we get into power, everything gets set back. But more importantly, the first laws that must be passed are those laws that forbid this from ever happening again, which gives criminal penalties for everything. All those people who made money off the people of the United States, they got to have to go back and claw it back and criminalize all of these behaviors that Donald Trump has normalized. And I don't mean like, oh, you get a fine of $500. I mean, you forfeit everything that was ever taken from the people of the United States. I mean, like Elon Musk, same thing, right? He loses every dime, right? And you can do that. And next Congress will have that ability. Now, will the presidency, the executive enforce that? He ain't going to be around forever, and the Republicans aren't going to be in power forever. So, there is some hope out there,
The
but
question is,
we
will
have to
there
do it.
ever, but if Trump gets his way, the question becomes, will there ever be another election again? And that's
Well,
the bigger problem because Project 2025 calls for something that Trump used to quote all the time, which was a Putin quote, that it doesn't
right.
matter who you vote for. All that matters is who's
Matters who
counting the
counts.
vote.
Actually, Stalin.
Yeah. Well,
Okay, but well, it's people power is coming. June 14th. I've just heard from the alliance that's doing the June 14th. They're looking to have the largest march in American history on Trump's birthday, everywhere but Washington, D.C., right? And they're, as I said, there were 76 million Kamala Harris voters. If half of them turn out, you can completely change this government. You can shut down the United States, make it insanely painful for them. Trump might want to do something authoritarian, but you know, it's time to stand up and fight because this is the most corrupt government in the history of America,
that's what
bar
you
none.
do every single day. That's what I do every single day.
Yeah. All
Malcolm,
right.
thank you, my brother. Safe travels,
Thanks,
and I will
man.
see you. And I will be seeing you later today.
Yeah. Well, I hope so because I'm arriving at 7, so I may miss today's.
Uh,
But we'll be back together.
you got it, my brother.